Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we are taking on, I think it's fair to say, a monumental task.
Oh, absolutely. We're trying to condense, what, a century of psychology into one conversation?
At least, we're synthesizing the foundational theories of human development. So if you've ever asked yourself, why on earth did I just do that?
Or is this just me, or am I programmed this way? How much is hardwired versus learned?
Exactly. This deep dive is basically your shortcut to those answers. We're going straight to the core academic material.
Yep, we're distilling the big frameworks, the ones that look at our biology, our thoughts, our emotions, to really get at why we change over our lives.
And these aren't just, dusty old ideas. They actively shape our schools, our therapy, even our social policies. So before we jump in, what actually makes a good theory in this field?
Well, first and foremost, it has to be testable. You need to be able to form a hypothesis that you can go out and, try to prove or disprove.
Okay, so it can't just be a nice story.
Exactly. And beyond that, these theories give us a common language, a kind of roadmap so we can actually discuss and predict how people develop instead of just watching it happen.
A roadmap. I like that. Okay, so where does the map begin?
It has to begin with the deepest foundation, the biological blueprint.
Which means we have to start with Charles Darwin. Now, I think everyone knows the basics of evolutionary theory, but there's a crucial part that often gets misunderstood.
That's right. He gave us these huge concepts like fitness, how well you fit your environment to survive and reproduce, and adaptation.
But most people think of evolution as this grand march toward perfection, right?
This inevitable progress. But here's the really counterintuitive part. In pure Darwinian terms, evolution has no strategy. It has no direction.
So adaptation just means you're surviving right now. It's not necessarily an upgrade for the future.
Precisely. That idea that there's no grand plan is so important. It really challenges how we think about ourselves. And this thinking heavily influenced what we now call sociobiology or evolutionary psychology.
And the sociobiologists, they make a pretty bold claim, don't they?
They do. They argue that our genetic makeup is the prime basis for our social behavior. The environment interacts with it, sure, but the genes are the foundation.
They also have this concept called, phylogenetic inertia?
Phylogenetic inertia. It's a great term. Think of it like trying to turn a massive cruise ship.
Okay.
It's the tendency for a species to just resist changing its basic genetic pattern. Change is only forced on it when something big happens in the environment. A flood, a famine, a new disease.
So the species basically wants to stay the same unless the world literally forces it to change to survive.
You got it. And if that's true, then the ultimate goal of all our behavior, even the stuff we think is conscious choice, is just about the survival and replication of our genes.
That brings us right back to our animal roots.
Which is the whole focus of ethology. It's the study of the biological and hereditary basis of our behavior patterns.
And ethology gave us one of the most famous examples of this kind of innate behavior. Imprinting.
Yes. The big aha moment, you often see it with birds. It's this irreversible learning process that happens in a really short, critical window right after they're born.
Where the duckling sees a pair of boots and just decides, yep, that's mom.
Exactly that. It's a genetically timed process that ensures the baby animal stays close to a protector, and that, in turn, ensures survival.
And for humans, that's the underlying mechanism for, say, an infant bonding with a parent.
It's the biological push for that initial attachment. But you can see the critique here, can't you?
Oh, yeah. If our ultimate goal is just replicating genes and we have this inertia, doesn't that just mean biology is destiny?
That's the big, heavy question it leaves us with, that maybe our intellect and free will are, well, less important than our ancestral past. A pretty tough constraint to start with.
Right. And that constraint is exactly what the cognitive theorists push back against. So moving from the blueprint, we get to the architect of our thoughts, Jean Piaget.
A total shift in focus. Piaget's background was actually in biology, but he became obsessed with how we acquire knowledge.
And his whole theory is built on, what, just watching and talking to kids?
Yep. Detailed observations and interviews. He wanted to understand how we come to know the world, what we call cognition. His big idea was that we all move through 4 major stages of understanding.
And the building block for that is the schema.
The schema. It's your internal plan for how to interact with the world. He talked about 2 kinds.
The early ones, the sensoromotor schemas, which are all about reflexes and physical actions.
And then the later cognitive schemas, which are about mental images, symbols, abstract things like math.
So how do you get from one to the other?
Through 2 key processes. First is assimilation. That's when you take something new and just sort of fit it into a box you already have.
Like a toddler seeing a cat for the first time and shouting, "Doggy!"
Perfect example. They're assimilating it into their existing four-legged furry animal schema.
But then comes the really important one, accommodation.
That's the moment of truth. It's when you realize the cat is definitely not a dog, and you have to change your mental box. You might even have to build a whole new one.
So it's not just about learning more facts, it's about fundamentally changing how you think.
That's the insight. And Piaget was very clear. This progression is not automatic. It's not just your genes unfolding. The cornerstone is experience. It's interacting with your environment.
So if Piaget is about how the individual builds their own reality, then Lev Vygotsky comes along and asks,
Who gave them the tools to build it?
exactly.
Vygotsky's life was tragically short, but his impact was huge. He argued you can't understand development without looking at the social historical context. It's all about culture and community. Development is a team sport.
Which leads to two of his concepts that are used everywhere in education today. First, the zone of proximal development, the ZPD.
The ZPD. It's the sweet spot for learning. It's that space between what you can do all by yourself and what you can do with a little bit of help.
So that's where a teacher or parent should aim their instruction.
That's where it's most effective. And the way they do it is with scaffolding.
Scaffolding, like teaching someone to ride a bike.
Yes, you start with a ton of support, holding the bike, running alongside. Then, as they get better, you slowly, incrementally pull that support back until they're doing it on their own. That's scaffolding in action.
So we've gone from biology to individual thought to thought shaped by society. Now let's go deeper into the inner world of emotion.
And for that, you have to turn to Sigmund Freud.
The biggest name in psychology and maybe the most controversial, and we have to remember, his theories came from analyzing patients, many of whom were quite emotionally ill.
Right, so his framework has a certain pessimism baked into it. His core idea was that our behavior is driven by our past and by these basic animalistic instincts.
And it all happens in the unconscious mind. We're caught in this constant fight between our inner drives and what society says is okay.
Which he visualized with that famous iceberg metaphor. You have three parts fighting it out.
Deep down, way below the surface, you have the ID.
It is just raw, primal energy. It wants what it wants right now. Food, warmth, sex. It operates on the pleasure principle. It's totally illogical.
Freud said dreams are the best way to see the id at work.
Then, emerging from that, you get the ego. That's your contact with reality. It's the mediator.
The negotiator trying to get the id's demands met without causing a disaster.
It works on the reality principle. It weighs the options. And then finally, you have the superego.
The inner judge. The little parent on your shoulder.
Exactly. It operates on the perfection principle. That's what makes you feel guilty. And for Freud, development was all about how sexual energy, the libido, moves to different parts of the body. If those needs aren't met properly, you get a fixation.
Meaning you might revert back to that stage's behaviors when you're stressed as an adult.
Right. It's a pretty deterministic and frankly kind of a doom and gloom model.
But it led to a really important evolution in the thinking with Erikson.
Erikson is like the optimistic version, a neo-Freudian. He took Freud's ideas and just expanded them across the entire lifespan.
He wasn't just focused on childhood. He looked at normal development.
And he said we're always changing. He called it a series of childhoods. He replaced Freud's psychosexual stages with 8 psychosocial crises.
Like trust versus mistrust in infancy, a central problem you have to solve to move on in a healthy way.
And instead of just focusing on libido, he talked about our circle of significant others expanding over time, from just your mother to your family to your peers, and eventually to all of humankind.
What I like most is the optimism. With Erikson, if you mess up a stage, you're not doomed.
No, not at all. You can go back. Later redemption is always possible. It gives you a sense of agency over your own emotional story.
And moving away from that whole analytic school, we get to the humanists.
Who really push back on all this determinism. For them, the driving force is the individual consciously choosing to seek self-fulfillment.
And that's where Abraham Maslow comes in, with his famous hierarchy of needs.
That's the one. The ultimate goal is self-actualization, becoming everything you can be. But you can't even start on that until your basic needs are met.
Physiological, safety, belonging, esteem. You have to climb that ladder first.
And Maslow said that people who get to that top level have what he called peak experiences, these incredible moments of joy and connection.
Then you have Carl Rogers, who was less about a grand theory and more about therapy.
His focus was client-centered therapy. He had this amazing concept of positive regard.
Which is what exactly?
It's giving someone your warmth, your genuine attention, and just unconditional acceptance. Rogers believed that if you provide that safe, non-judgmental space, people will naturally start to grow and solve their own problems. A very empowering idea.
Okay, so we've covered the wiring, the mind, the emotions. Now we look completely outward at the environment itself.
This is the world of behavioral theory. The idea here is that behavior is shaped almost entirely by external factors. It's all about learning.
Starting with the basics, Pavlov and classical conditioning.
The dogs and the bell. Learning by association.
And then you have operant conditioning.
Which is all about consequences. You have reinforcements, which make a behavior more likely to happen again.
And punishers, which make it less likely. And for long-term change, reinforcement is way more powerful than punishment.
For sure. Just think about how social media apps train you to keep scrolling. It's all about unpredictable reinforcement.
The strict behaviorists said you had to experience this stuff firsthand, but then Albert Bandura came along.
And he expanded the whole field with social cognitive theory. He said, wait a minute, you don't have to get burned to learn that fire is hot.
You can just watch someone else do it.
Exactly. That's observational learning, or modeling. We learn so much, our values, our social roles, our skills, just by watching and imitating the people around us, our role models.
Which brings us to the final set of theories, the contextual ones, which really zoom out.
Way out. Like Yuri Bronfenbrenner's bioecological theory. He visualized it as a set of Russian nesting dolls.
I love that image. The person's biology is the tiny doll in the middle.
And the first layer around it is the microsystem. That's your immediate world. Your family, your friends, your school, and then you have layers outside of that, like the culture and the laws of your society.
So a problem in your family, the microsystem, is always being affected by, say, economic policies happening in the outer layers.
It's all connected. Then you have sociocultural theory from people like Barbara Rogoff.
Her idea is that development is a cultural process, right? You can only understand it by looking at a specific community's practices.
You got it. And finally, there's family systems theory, which sees the family as its own organism, always trying to maintain a balance, a dynamic equilibrium.
So if one person in the family changes, the whole system has to shift and adapt around them.
What's amazing about all these external theories is how practical they are. They've given us real tools, therapies for anxiety, phobias, conscious ways to modify behavior.
So we have made it through a full deep dive. We started with the kind of rigid blueprint of Darwin,
Navigated the mind of Piaget as it builds reality,
plunged into the chaotic, unconscious world of Freud's Yield.
and ended up with the powerful shaping forces of the environment all around us.
It's the contrasts that are so striking. You have genetic destiny on one side, and on the other, this idea that we're constantly shaped by experience.
You have the Ide's selfish pleasure-seeking versus Erikson's lifelong optimistic quest for resolution. These aren't just theories. They're really the essential tools for understanding yourself.
So after all that, what does this mean for you listening right now?
Well, think about that conflict we just mentioned. On one side, you have that innate biological programming, remember phylogenetic inertia, how hard it is to turn that cruise ship. And on the other, you have the idea that we can be shaped by experience and acceptance, like in Rogers' work.
Okay.
So when you look at your own life, at the things you find it hardest to change, how much of that is just a rigid echo of your ancestral past? And how much is actually a conscious choice that you have the power to change?
That's a big question. To make it even more pointed, think about the last major decision you made. Maybe it was a career change or a big move.
Which one single theory that we've talked about today best explains why you made that choice? Was it Freud's inner conflict? Piaget's need to accommodate a new reality? Or maybe just Bandura's modeling, seeing a role model do something and thinking, I can do that too?
Something to mull over until our next deep dive.